Okay, Deadpool and Wolverine time, everybody. Will they save theaters? Re-energize the MCU? Will they kiss? I'm gonna say, who's to say? I'm gonna try not to spoil anything about DP and Boozy Claus, but I'm saying the other two are fair game because the first one's been out almost 10 years. If you were gonna watch it, you'd have watched it. Here's the time code for the new one if you want to skip right to that, though. Anyway, what can we say about Deadpool? If you've read the comics, it's definitely more than me, but I'm the one making the video, so let me know how wrong I get everything in the comments below. Don't worry, I can't read. Anyway, as a normie, Deadpool's a character that I want to like. Fictional self-awareness paired with immortality basically makes him Marvel's Bugs Bunny. Either way, he's a clown, a jester, a funny man in a world of... Wait, are Marvel movies comedies? Like, even if their sense of humor can mostly be boiled down to the by now cringeworthy inclination to say some version of, well, that just happened, and making pop culture references, they are, like, trying to be funny, a little bit sometimes, right? I suppose trying is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. I would ask what that leaves for Deadpool in an already very cramped market, and one that people have grown quite weary of, but we already know the answer to that. He's edgy and he looks at the camera. Getting an R rating was the intent, even before they leaked that test footage a decade ago, and it's probably the only thing that makes him stand out amongst an abundance of squeaky clean super people who usually only kill people by inference. Wait, I forgot about the boys. And Kick-Ass. And Super, oh my god. Like the rest of the X-Men characters though, he isn't, or wasn't, owned by Disney. But now that he is, everybody gets to find out in Deadpool and Wolverine exactly what Michael Rodent and Bob Iger will let him say. And I guess also if Disney's ever gonna formally incorporate the X-Men into the MCU, which is definitely inevitable, they're just really dragging their heels about it. You know what, I'm talking too much. For those who don't remember, Deadpool's cinematic debut was circa 2009 in X-Men Origins Wolverine, which I won't be watching because I just don't feel like it. Long story short though, it was pretty stinky, and the film's version of Deadpool reflected this. Ryan Reynolds purportedly worked really hard for a number of years to make something happen for the character, with 20th Century Fox just not smelling what Reynolds was stepping in the entire time. And then someone leaked the aforementioned test footage, which immediately went viral and got Reynolds, director Tim Miller, and writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick the green light. They also got $58 million, which is teeny tiny for a film like this, but the film made close to $800 million, which is to say, people loved this movie when it came out. It made a huge splash, everyone had been waiting for it for a real long time, and it was novel. Deadpool kills people, and he has fun doing it. He talks shit about other superhero movies, he knows he's in a movie, and the whole thing just feels grimy from start to finish in a way that so many other superheroes just don't. And for the sake of comparison, you know what else came out in 2016? Batman v Superman, Captain America Civil War, Doctor Strange, X-Men Apocalypse, and fucking Suicide Squad. By comparison to all that stagnant, lukewarm garbage, with exceptions granted to any sequence in Doctor Strange that makes extensive use of psychedelic magic stuff, Deadpool felt really refreshing by comparison. And to cut right to the chase, soft 6. I could be shamed into a 5 though. Watching the film again, the first thing that stands out is how disruptive the flashbacks feel. I understand why they're there, they're supposed to humanize Deadpool, but putting aside how much I hate a forced romance side plot, I feel like these could have been more textural, I guess. These sequences take up a lot of time, and I kind of just don't care. Also, they just fridge her in the next one, and then bring her back with time travel bullshit. I call shenanigans, that is having your cake and eating it too. And like, I don't know, what would a Deadpool who really can't remember his past be like? Someone who is burying their trauma and grief so deep in humor they can't even access the truth of it. Wouldn't that be tragic? Like, you cannot tell me that Deadpool wouldn't make perfect sense as an unreliable narrator. That would be funny. I feel like the film is at its best when it's not constructing elaborately vulgar epithets or making references though. That shit gets old and feels a touch embarrassing in retrospect. That's not to say it doesn't have any jokes though. Dad? This definitely won't be the only time I say this in the video, but although humor is subjective, I don't really think it's funny when Wade's being mean in this movie. There's nothing that justifies this treatment of Blind Al, and it just feels exploitative and mean, which is just lame. The character's biggest conflict is also really fucking stupid. Wade wants to go back to his wife after being tortured into getting his powers, but he thinks he's too ugly, so he has to hunt down the guy who gave him his powers so he'll fix Wade's face. This is just annoyingly juvenile. I can't stand it. Also, his face isn't even that bad. I've seen so much worse, and it's just a terrible justification for the character isolating himself and committing such incredible violence. That isn't funny, it's just dumb. I'd still argue that the film has its merits though, especially compared to its sanitized contemporaries, and that the actual biggest issue with the film is how cheap it looks. But it was undeniably made on the cheap and wouldn't have gotten made otherwise, so like, call that one a mulligan. Anyway, how's the second one compare? Well, first off, the budget basically doubled, and it shows. This one's got a bigger cast with some more recognizable actors like Josh Brolin, Zazie Beetz, and Terry Crews, and there's a James Bond-esque opening title sequence. Really just more effects work in general, and none of that is gonna make the movie feel inherently better, but I think it all helps in an incremental sort of way. The first film occupied kind of a weird space because while it was definitely a superhero movie, it wasn't nearly as flashy or large in scope as other films in the genre, but it got a lot of mileage out of its R rating, Reynolds' charisma, and being so hotly anticipated as a moonshot kind of movie. But again, that bump in the budget really helps. Taking the scrappy sort of qualities of the original and giving the filmmakers some more room to play makes the film less reliant on pushing boundaries of vulgarity as its gimmick. By the time of this film, I think audiences understood that Deadpool is pretty elastic, and I think they could have gotten even more out of the fourth wall breaking stuff. Like if all you're gonna do is have him look at the camera and say, wish the studio had given us a bigger budget, or Ryan Reynolds sucks, or something Act 3 structure, then I really don't think you're making the most interesting use of that feature of the character that you could. Like, if anyone can name a live-action superhero movie that is better suited to making use of the rule of cool, please do so, but I bet you can't. To get back on track though, this one feels like it's got a lot more heart than the first. Thematically, it's about Wade finding his found family, and he sacrifices himself to prevent an abused child from going down the wrong path. So that's all good, that's humanizing, I like that. Julian Dennison and Josh Brolin both do good work too, but I think the unequivocal standout is Zazie Beetz' Domino. She knows exactly what kind of movie she's in, and she plays Domino with a laid-back self-assuredness that makes perfect sense for a character who can kind of do whatever and have everything work out fine. I'm feeling a 7. I wasn't that impressed by this movie when it first came out, but honestly, in hindsight, it's not that bad. It's pretty good. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Anyway, time for the main event. Deadpool and Wolverine knows exactly what it is, and what it is a crowd pleaser. It's gonna be difficult to describe why without spoilers, but suffice to say, the film joyfully revels in the catalog of the more obscure non-MCU Marvel films that time has forgotten in an era of theoretically fruitful Who wrote this? I want to start by saying that the intro sequence sets up the tone perfectly, and I'm pretty pumped it wasn't spoiled by the trailers. Besides the tone though, it's also something that is only possible in film, which I like. Comics are both silent and still, so besides an animated project, this sequence could really only be done justice in this medium, and I think the movie's better for it. But this movie is goofy as hell, and I love that. More high-budget, goofy movies, please. And like, can we just talk about how this film is an out-and-out comedy for a second? Be honest, when was the last time you saw a new comedy in theaters that felt like it had an actual budget? But for real, it's pretty slim pickings for the full-throttle funny films these days, and I feel like I couldn't be happier with this stupid superhero movie. Also contributing to this is a pretty snappy edit too, though. It feels like the film just has some really crisp cuts that help the character reactions land really well, and that goes a long way in comedy where timing is everything. And to continue talking about comedy, remember how I said earlier that Deadpool is a jester? Well, that now feels more true than ever, especially in the classical sense. Like, jesters weren't just entertainers, they were some of the only subjects in a royal court who were allowed and encouraged, but always through comedy, to criticize the opinions and decisions of the reigning monarch. And as a self-hating viewer of the majority of Marvel films, that just feels nice. Once upon a time, these movies felt new and interesting. The degree to which they could, and then did, feel interconnected was novel, and at this scale, it was exciting. And then there were like 3 to 4 of them every year. More than anything, I think what this phase of the MCU has shown is the degree to which many of these movies and shows are connected can and will devalue your experience with any singular piece if you haven't done the required reading. And to be fair, this film doesn't quite escape that. Characters do show up from and but the film gives you all you need to know about them when they show up, and they're basically just cameos for the diehards. Point being, nobody wants to do fucking homework for your stupid superhero movies, Disney. But Deadpool coming along and lampshading how stupid, predictable, and played out the whole thing is feels comforting. Like, does anyone watching this know what I mean by the alienation effect? If not, the alienation effect is a dramatic technique that is designed to create distance between the audience and the work by drawing attention to the inherent artificiality of the experience. If that sounds complicated, it's really not. It's what's happening when Deadpool comments directly on rights issues, Disney money, or and for me, it just kind of works. I like this. The film is incredibly metatextual from start to finish, including the major source of conflict, and I feel like most people have at least some idea about the complications of rights issues around Marvel stuff at this point, so it's nice to have a character who has the same level of knowledge about these things, and that you can be excited with when there's a reveal of a character like Or how fucking ridiculous it is to start the film by I should probably wrap this up though. What else do I need to say? Matthew McFadden, or Faden, the guy from Succession, does a great job as Mr. Paradox. He's clearly having a lot of fun with the part and imbues the character with a casual theatricality that makes for a fun villain. I like this. Mr. Paradox was good. Hugh Jackman does a great job as Wolverine, but you already knew that. He's been playing the character for like 2 decades, and even when he's in a bad movie, he does a good job. And honestly, I feel like Ryan Reynolds just keeps getting better as Deadpool. At this point, I feel like he's kind of nailed the physicality of his performance, given that you see so little of his face and he has to do more with his body. That feels like it is where it needs to be now. And even though the constant fourth wall breaking shatters the illusion of Deadpool being a real character and not just Ryan Reynolds in a suit, he's charismatic enough that I kind of just don't care anymore. I kind of want to give this an 8, but I feel like part of that is just coming from me understanding the references. So, you know, we're gonna bump that down to a 7. But secretly it's an 8, just don't tell nobody. The buddy cop vibes carry the film, and the spectacle and snappy dialogue go a long way. I think Deadpool is probably gonna put butts in seats just because people are gonna be interested to see what he can do with other MCU characters. But yeah, you know, go see it, maybe, if you want. If you don't like superhero movies, I completely understand that. What's an appropriate way to end this? I don't know how to... No, wait, I forgot to say like and subscribe!